Okay, vertical gardening. And there's multiple reasons for growing upward. Some of them, in my case, it started with the deer. And I needed to get things off the ground and off the open space into, I got it up on my deck. But that's limited space. So I had to figure out a way that now it's out of the way of the deer, but how do I get it so I can grow enough to make it worthwhile? People in apartments, some of us are retiring, downsizing. You may only have your veranda as a space to grow things, but if you're a person who likes to grow things, you're going to need to fill that veranda. Some of us are aging, and the elbows and the knees and the hips and the ankles are going, and it's a whole lot easier to work at waist level or above than it is to get down on that ground on your knees and try to get your gardening done. So one of those will apply to us, or something. Things you need to consider, and I usually recommend, if you're going into vertical gardening, try things out. You're going to need to do a little bit of observation because you're going to see your yard differently or your growing space differently. You'll need to make sure it does have 6 hours of sunshine. And that was one of the mistakes I made at first, because a part of my yard that I wanted to use, I was usually in just in late afternoon, and I knew it was sunny then. I didn't realize it was actually in shade most of the rest of the day. So I had a little bit of a failure there, but I learned to watch my yard. And as you're adding on, you'll be looking at the yard a little differently. You're going to need water access. Since you're going up, you really need, the focus of the water is on the roots for the most part. So you're going to need a place where you can get a hose or a drip irrigation system. And I saw my first drip irrigation presentation here with Master Gardeners. And that's a wonderful system if you're growing on a small veranda or a deck or a local, it'll take care of all the watering for you. You're growing things upward, and a lot of them are things that would normally be growing creeping along the ground. And you find that they're much heavier than you ever thought they were when you have the whole plant having to be supported upward. So being aware of what you need for some kind of support. And wind. A zucchini plant will turn into a sail in a 10-mile-an-hour wind, and it'll take it right out of the ground if it's not anchored and supported. Or if you don't have it at quite the right angle for the prevailing winds. It was also something that I had to work with. I was planting in the wrong direction when I first started off for my house. Accessibility of product. Okay, we're going to grow it upwards, but you're going to need to be able to pick the fruit or vegetable. And so you're going to need access to that. It's a little different than the vines crawling against along the ground again. Then you lift up the leaf and you find your product. But when it's growing upward or against the wall or against a fence, you need to be able to get behind it sometimes. So we'll see some examples of that. This is one example of growing against a wall or a fence. You can use all that space. These are called plant pockets or wall pockets, and they're available online, probably in all of our garden departments. I have a small one. I believe it only has 9 pockets. but I hung it on the side of my pump house because when I look out from my kitchen, I see my driveway and I see a pump house. And usually people have lean tools. It's not what I want to watch if I'm washing dishes or fixing dinner. So I got my 9 pockets. I put some petunias in and some lettuce, a variety of lettuce. And it's beautiful. And the petunias attract the bees. And so I get bees in my garden. But it's just a small section of garden that is visible to me in an area that I normally wouldn't be able to see anything growing. So you can kind of look around your yard and see what areas do I want to enhance. This is another of the plant pockets or the wall pockets. They're not terribly expensive. I believe the 9 pocket one that I have hanging ran me about $19. And it's good for year after year. Eventually they do decompose, but I have had them for 5 or 6 years and they've been hanging outside continually. I've never taken them in. This was an example a friend of mine used, and she started growing zucchini on this, found it at Habitat for Humanity at the retail store and took it home. And it brightened up her yard, but it also provides her a place to grow. And as it grows up and over, the zucchini hang down. So here's the accessibility. You can reach right inside that and pick them off. They're very easy to get to. No knees involved. This is bamboo. And I've seen this done with twigs from trees where they're either zip tied or twine tied just to make kind of a big igloo shape. And the plants will grow up and over. You need to use some pretty sturdy ones for the frame because a plant that size will be heavy. But this is one where you can walk right in underneath and pick your vegetables. They're very accessible, and grandchildren love this because it makes an automatic fort about midsummer. This is another friend who just looked in her barns and around the yard and in her neighbors' junk piles and came up with 2 they're supported growing. She has different vegetables growing on each one of those arbors or supports. Some of them are made for gardens. Some of them are made for bed frames. Some of them are just fencing that she cut a piece of and anchored in. So it kind of starts with you looking around to see what do you already have. If it goes upward, maybe it can be used as a support. This was, and it may be hard to see because it's kind of covered by plants, but this is an old ladder. It's an old wooden ladder that we're afraid, excuse me, we're afraid to climb on anymore because it's pretty rickety. But I moved it out on the deck and I've used it for the last 4 years. I have pots stacked in the front of the ladder, and then I use each one of the steps, and I put a board through from the step to the back to the brace on the back, and it can be set up anywhere. So I found the place that had my 6 hours of sun and that I could get to water, and that has become kind of a standard on the deck of piling up the plants. I think there's some rhubarb, there's a rose somewhere in there. So it's mixed vegetables and flowering plants. The one on the left is a commercially available rack that gives the plants a place to send their tendrils out and just they'll just grow up that without really any support. You don't have to tie it or anything. They usually just grab on and grow up, and you can reach in between from the sides, you can reach in to pick the vegetables that are hanging there. This can be a do-it-yourself, or you can order kits. Again, it's bamboo and twine. And anything, bamboo is kind of, excuse me, kind of slick. But if you have the twine, it gives the plants a place to grip. And you can make it as tall as you want. You can buy bamboo that are, well, at least 6 feet. They may sell taller than that. 6 is as tall as I've gone. You can buy at the plant stores locally, or you can order online. You need a good heavy twine or a small rope, and anchor it top to bottom, and the plants will just take off and cover it. Again, you can reach into it very easily to pick the plant or pick the fruits or vegetables. Here's a metal one on the left that can be purchased at most of our stores. They, again, are not expensive, and they're very easy to use. And if you see, it has the big rectangles you could reach into, or you could go in from the sides. It's easy to move around if you need to relocate it the next year. You're not anchored in concrete or any or rocks, or it's fairly mobile. On the right-hand side is from a cattle panel, and Alice did a Master Gardener class on that. It's very easy to use, and it's very easy to create. I don't know if that class is still available online. Do we know?
It is.
It is. It is the best tomato cage I've ever had. I don't have it wired together here yet, because actually I found last year when I used it, I didn't really need the zip ties to hold it together. But it's great. The tomatoes get huge. They have a lot of support any direction they want to grow. And you can reach in through those big openings in the cattle panel. When you have to take it down for the winter, you just nest them, because it's 2 right angles. And they nest, and they'll sit right up against the foundation of your house, so they hardly take up any space at all. Much better than the cages, which you have to figure out how to stack and where you can keep them. This is just that was a wonderful class. This is commercially available, and you can see the plants grow 6 feet, and they're hanging their fruit and vegetables. So this is a failure, and I did it. The place with the most sun is in our driveway. And I thought, well, we have our big security lamp out there, and nothing is happening in that space. So I will wrap fencing around it and grow beans, and they can grow up the fencing. Well, I set the pots next to the light, which meant they were available for deer. And I did find out they do eat beans. But then the beans and the vines crawled inside the fencing, and I had used a fencing with a very small opening. I couldn't pick any beans that got inside it. So I couldn't reach them if I tried to go down from the top, and they were inside. I couldn't get through the fencing. So this was before I took down the fencing and gave it up altogether. But it's why I say, try 1 or 2 things and try to think through all of these pieces of it before you purchase anything or go through all the effort of building it. This is 2 hanging baskets, one inverted over the other, wired together, and you can plant through holes in the lining. It has like the coconut shells or the fibers. You can also put a tomato upside down growing from the bottom of it and hang it, and it's pretty effective, and everybody in your neighborhood will be talking about it. But it's very easy to just wire them together. You fill the soil, and then to fill the top with soil, you kind of have to mound it, and then you slip the hanging basket over the pile of soil that's on the bottom basket, but also good for succulents. Hens and chicks and things like that will cover it. It's really, it's an easy way to plant if you just have one or two places to hang something. I keep a bench. It's actually, well, it is a bench on my deck that has wheels on the bottom. It's part of how I'm dealing with getting access to sunshine. Early in the season, the sun is still rising and coming up behind trees. And so there's only a portion of my deck gets enough sun. So I can wheel it to that section. And then as we get later on in the summer, I move it across the deck because it's too hot next to my house. The reflected sun has just been too hot and I can't keep things watered. But if I wheel it over to the other side, then it gets more direct sunlight as the sun is higher in the sky. So if you're finding you have difficulty getting the 6 hours, that might be an option. I'm a big believer in wheels. Here's another example on the left. I have done this. In fact, I always do this, stacking pots on each other. It gives me 2/3, 3/4 of the pot surface, the soil surface to plant in. Things that need protection or more filtered sun go on the side away from the sun, but it's definitely vertical. This has mostly flowering plants. The one on the right is using PVC pipe coming up through or up to a tray. You need to support those, but it's another way of experimenting with the pots you have. The one on the left, if you're using the base level, the bottom level, all those pots have to be the same height. Same for the next one, as long as you're building up, because you want the surface to be flat so you can pile more on top. These are hanging. I have not done the one on the left. I've seen it done several times, and they use chain and washers. I would like to do, that's where I would like to do one of those videos putting it together. But if you're on a deck or on a veranda, that's the kind of thing to look into, probably looking for a commercially prepared one to begin with. But it gives you a lot of space. You're not even using up floor space for this one. The one on the right, I have done, and I don't know that you get a lot of growing space, but it's fun, and people love to come in and ask questions about it. I used rebar. They used looks like a PVC pipe, and it's very simple. You start with a big pot at the bottom, shove the rebar or the PVC pipe down in it, and then you just take your clay pots. They have the hole in the bottom, and you just slide them down and tilt them one way or another, and then slide the next one on. And it does have a very small footprint, so that if you are in a small space, as long as it gets light and it's easy to water, that's an option, and it's great in a corner. This was from Jerry Winchell's house. He uses the side of his, it looks like a shed, starts it down below, runs the twine or rope up to an anchoring bar, because it's going to be heavy. That much plant is going to be very heavy. It's lovely though, because you can get behind it and pick things from behind it. It also tends not to have a lot of slug problems, because slugs go for easy access. And these plants, these zucchini, squash, whatever you're growing, cucumbers, are not sitting on the ground waiting to be eaten. They're getting plenty of air circulation. They're They're out of the mud, so if we do get a big rainy spell, they're not gonna rot on the ground. And it's the same thing when we have the arches and the pyramids for them to grow up. But this is something, if you already have a building, an outbuilding, or a fence that you can anchor it to. It serves a lot of purposes to grow this way. This is the mesh bag from that last one, the last one where they're growing up toward the building. If you have heavy vegetables, this was a squash. It looks like a bird, but it's a squash. And if it's getting really heavy, you want to give it a little support, you can buy these mesh bags online. They come in different sizes, and some of them are smaller. You put it on when the fruit or vegetable is smaller, and it will expand as it grows. This is a simple solution. It's fencing, and you'll notice it has big holes or big rectangles where you can get your hand through to get the fruit and vegetable. And use, 2x2 or bigger stakes or rebar or PVC piping to hold it up. And almost any vining plant can be used, can grow this way, as well as some of the berries. On the left, and I've seen this sold and I've seen people do it, and I have a recommendation, and actually when I do this live, I have a sample that I bring in. If you set plants on a board and suspend it, I will guarantee the plants somewhere during the summer will end up on the floor. Good wind and that starts rocking. So what I do is cut a hole. I use a jigsaw and I just trace the bottom of the pot that I'm going to set on there, and I go maybe half an inch bigger, cut that out and set the pot down in that hole so that it's not going to get rocked off of the shelf. The picnic table next to it, I've used a picnic table which we had used, and then kids moved out of the house, and now the picnic table is become a storage area. So I cleared it off, and it's now supporting plants. And I have some plants even underneath it, like some of the spinach and lettuce that I didn't want sitting in the heat. And they get enough light, enough sun coming in as the sun moves across, but they're protected from that midday sun sitting underneath the table. And then the table is filled with other pots and trays. I didn't see this in real life, but I saw the picture and thought, if you have picture frames, if you have bed springs, if you have something that you can mount on the side of a building or on the side of a fence, string it with wire or a piece of that fencing like we used in some of the other ones, spray paint it, make it a piece of art, and grow your plants up the side. Here's another one, and it looks to me like this was out of a piece of furniture of some sort. But these kind of things, and if you spray paint them and you hang them up, they can be a piece of art in your yard. More that the one on the left is homemade out of twigs, branches, some bamboo. The one on the right, I believe, was commercially purchased. But again, it serves an artistic value in your garden, but it has the fruit and the vegetables hanging right there as you walk by to pick up, just as easy as can be. These are ones that can stay out year round and be attractive, but during your growing season, use them as supports for your vines. Each one of these can be used, but they still stay attractive in your yard off season. This is my plant table. About 20 years ago, I was having trouble with my knees, and I went out to my husband's wood supply without his knowledge, I'll say. And I pulled out boards and made one that's about, it was 3 by 4, I believe. Put a support across in the middle, and it's just the sides of a box. I screwed them together. The picture on the left shows how the legs were attached. I didn't trust my work, so I put a second leg that I screwed to the first leg, and it comes up right underneath the wall of the box. So it gave it extra support. I used fabric. What is it called? The fabric that you can use that's very, very, and it has a name, and I'll think of it at 2:30 in the morning. But I also used that to anchor the bottom because it was strongest, and I staple gunned it all around the inside of the box. And then I took screening, because it has kind of big holes. I took screening from an old window that we had replaced and put that to hold the soil in. And when I did fill it with soil, enough went through that it looked like dusting sugar on a cake or something. It really wasn't much. I just washed it off, and that was the end of the dirt going through. But the plants, and I also have wheels on the bottom of these, so I can move this table around. I called it my salad table, and I planted lots of lettuce and radishes and things I would want in a salad. And it's right outside my kitchen window. And I thought that was the best invention I ever did. Used it for about 15 years before it rotted. I did not use special wood. We did subsequently build a different one with cedar, and it's still going, but this is something that you can get waist high. It was cheaper to build it, especially out of scraps, than it is to buy them. They've gotten pretty spendy. At the time I built this, you couldn't find them in catalogs. I think you only saw them in Master Gardener programs around the country or something, but it's a handy way of getting your produce at a level you can work. This is how I start out. I walk around, I look in every building on our property and my neighbors' garages and whatnot, and find pieces and try to figure out if they would work together. This is something that I did end up putting 2 pots in. I moved it to a sunny area and I screwed that backing onto it, and it gives it enough support for cucumbers. And then they can drape down the backside of it because I can easily get around that thing. The arch to the right is a commercially prepared one again that is attractive in off season and dresses up your garden with vines in the summer. This is Master Gardener project. This was a strawberry tower, and she's planting strawberries. Now this, we did do a drip irrigation in, and holes poked in the side, and strawberries will be planted there. You can do it with lettuces. You can do it with, well, you can do it with almost anything, but it's really effective as a strawberry tower. It's beautiful when the strawberries are out, and it's so easy to pick things off of this that, and you can set it anywhere in your yard. Kind of an assembly of, okay, this is what I'm going to use. But bamboo, I buy in the bundles, and then it lasts for years, and I have a supply of them forever. Odds and ends, I have some, well, here. There's some rebar, those metal poles that you use to strengthen your foundations. The center that looks like a screen there, that's a panel, a cattle panel. The chicken wire down in the right-hand corner, depends on where you're going to use it. If you can get access from the back, or if you're filling it entirely with soil and moss and whatnot, but you're going to need to be able to get access inside those little holes. So be careful where you use that. It's a popular form of the wire, but it may be difficult to harvest your crops with it. For stacking, I have seen those long planters on the left where they're stacked multiple levels, and you can get some very effective vining plants in those. Or again, the lettuce and tomato and radishes, the fun ones. Chain is good for hanging baskets, for providing the support if you have something growing on a deck, you want it to go all the way up. And here were some of the things. Probably going to need S-hooks. Plastic zip ties are really handy. You can use lawn edgings, like the 6-inch edgings that you could put around, and you can fill it with soil and then do a smaller circle on the inside. I've seen that used for strawberry beds. And again, binding if you plant in the top level and it kind of cascades down. Old benches, ladders, pockets. I've used hockey sticks. If you have a child that plays hockey, you will have a bunch of broken hockey sticks. And they're good for growing peas or beans. Hardware cloth, that's what it was called, the wire support underneath my table. It's very sturdy, lasts for years, and it was a good, it held the screen that held the soil. The soil would have gone through the hardware cloth because it has pretty good size holes in it. But the screening, just the vinyl screening from a window, is very good for holding the soil and letting the water pass through. And that's basically trying out the stores around town. Habitat for Humanity has a retail store, Builder Liquidators. YouTube has a good resource on growvegetables.com or growveg.com. And it was a master gardener who led me to that one. Gardener's supplies, maybe a little more expensive, but the catalog comes to your door and you can get good ideas from it. Can't think of anything. I think we're at the end.